If you're looking for one of the best minivans in America, and certainly the least minivan looking minivan in America, you might want to check out the 2025 Kia Carnival. Today we're out in southern Washington taking a look at the non-hybrid regular V6 version of the Carnival. If you want to know how the hybrid drives, stay tuned because I'm actually going to be driving one in about 2 weeks or so, and hopefully I'll be able to tell you all about it very soon. But let's talk about what I think is actually going to be the more popular model, at least at the beginning, and that's going to be the model with the standard 3.5-liter naturally aspirated V6 engine under the hood. Basically the same kind of engine we find actually in most minivans in North America. Now for 2025, what has made the Carnival updated for this model year? Well, obviously it's the design up front, inside and outside. We have a new grille and a slightly tweaked front bumper. It's not a world of change, if I'm honest. It's borrowed some of the styling cues from other Kia models, the more distinctive LED daytime running light there, the distinctive Ice Cube style multi-module headlights that gives me a little bit of a Cadillac vibe, which is not a bad thing. Different grills depending on the different trims. This one has these multi-module sort of chrome little blips there. I do think this is an attractive and cohesive design, and I like the fact that Kia is trying to make it look a little bit less minivan-like while also still retaining a lot of the practicality that you'd expect in a minivan. So we have a pretty upright, relatively short hood up front, which really maximizes the kind of space that we find on the inside. As we come around the vehicle, I will apologize for the background. We're just out here in a random resort in Washington, so sorry for that. But you'll notice that as we move around, they've done their best to try and disguise the sliding doors. So they've put the sliding rail right here in the middle with body colored sections above and below. And then they're trying to give us a little bit of, I don't know, Chevy Tahoe going on back here with that 3D printed pattern like thing. It actually is kind of a geometric pattern if you look at that. And then more of an SUV style window behind. It doesn't look overtly like a minivan until you see, of course, that line right there. And the big hatch in the back, because if I get Nick to come all the way around to the back, you'll see the redesigned taillights back here mimicking what's going on up front. I like this look. I think it's really crisp and really modern, but then of course we get the minivan style hatch in the back, and that is unquestionably minivan. Part of me would love to see if they really wanted to go for an Un-Minivan kind of vibe, maybe sort of a mini tailgate split hatch like we find in a Range Rover or something like that. That would be kind of cool. But the reason to get the minivan, of course, is about the room inside. We have the third row seats folded down. They fold all the way into the floor. Lots and lots of room going on here. Before we unfold them though and show you around the cargo area, we should dive into the seating, because you'll notice we have this seat sitting kind of all by itself there. We're going to talk about that in a bit. Let's hop up front though first. Let's go row by row. The first part of the Un-Minivan mission for the Carnival was to give us, honestly, a less practical center console. And that's the one bummer in this design. But it does give the front end, as we're going to look at here, the front passenger compartment, certainly more of an SUV-like vibe than a minivan vibe. The downside, you can't walk through the middle and you don't have any sort of bag holders or anything like that going on here. The seat design itself, these are certainly a little bit of a blend between minivan and SUV design. The seating position is actually quite high off the ground, which is something that I like. So seating position in many minivans is actually a bit more full-size SUV than 3-row crossover. So seating position-wise, this is a bit more similar to something like a Tahoe or a Suburban, a lot less like a Kia Telluride. We of course have power sliding doors, and we have manual sliding seats here for the second row. This does not have the optional throne option, but we have gobs of legroom. Obviously that's why minivans are so popular with families. Just check out the legroom I have here. I'll whip out the tape measure. I have 9.5 inches of legroom with the front seat comfortably adjusted for me at 6 feet tall. And that means if we measure for child seat fitment here, we get 33 inches of room. This is actually one of the best figures that we've ever measured when it comes to legroom because of the way these second row seats move. Then we get this unique, sort of oddly positioned middle seat. It's on its own slide, which is what's interesting here. So you don't have to have it way back there. You can have it even with these seats. You can have it actually in front if you want to have the child seat closer to the parents up front, or if you want it maybe a little bit behind because maybe you want a little bit of elbow room in the outboard seats and you want the kid to feel like they're part of the party, you can have people scoot around. And if you're not using the third row, you can scoot it way, way back. Way further back, of course, than these outboard seats go. And that just gives you, I mean, an insane amount of room. I mean, my knees are, let's see, can I even measure this? I think it's somewhere around 38, 40 inches of room between. I can't even stick out my feet and touch that center console. That's insane. Anyway, that's what's going on there. Of course, if you want to get into the third row, got to unfold those. So I'll just pop back here into the cargo area, where it's a pretty simple two-step process. 1 and then 2. And then you can adjust the headrests however you want. Same thing over here on that side. 1 and then 2. Pop up all the headrests, head restraints, whatever you want to call them. Close the hatch in the back. And now let's see how that second row access goes. You should know that you cannot leave a child seat latch anchored into place in the outboard seating positions and still hop into the third row because of the way these seats move. You can only do that in one minivan in America, and that would be the Chrysler Pacifica without the plug-in hybrid option. If you get the plug-in hybrid option, the seats don't move in the same way, rather unusually. Now, this seat, I'll go ahead and slide that all the way back and move these seats forward so Nick can get in here and see. We have kind of a stair step affair going on in the back. These rear seats are reclinable as well. And we have tons of room back here in the third row. Bit more usable headroom than we find in the Odyssey. The Odyssey really has a very rounded shaped area because of the way the hinges are designed in the hatch in the back. This has a bit more of a square ceiling. We have air vents up there. Certainly enough room for three people across the back. In the back seats, we also have latch anchors, which is kind of a cool touch. So we have 5 sets of latch anchors in here, all 3 sitting positions in the middle, and then the seating positions in the back. With those seats in place, let's go ahead and measure what we have back here. So again, 11 inches up from the seat bottom. Over to the back, we have 26 inches. So you'd be hard pressed to put a rear-facing child seat behind a rear-facing child seat, but unless you have quadruplets or something like that, it's probably not gonna be too big of a problem. But you can still put lots of booster seats, adults even back here in the third row, very, very comfortably. While also having, let's get back there into the cargo area, the biggest cargo area in the minivan segment in our testing. We actually have a video out where we test this generation Carnival directly with the other minivans in America, and we were surprised by exactly how big this cargo area is, about 40 cubic feet or so. We were able to fit 2 more 24-inch roller bags in this cargo area than in any other minivan in North America because the cargo area is just so big. That's really obvious if you put small roller bags like that in there. I mean, they just feel so tiny compared to the rest of the cargo area in the back. If you're really on the fence, do I need a 3-row SUV? Am I looking at a Grand Highlander or something big like that? And you honestly really want to carry 4 or 5 people and 4 or 5 people's worth of luggage for a weekend away, you really just should get something like the Carnival. You're just gonna fit a lot more luggage inside. Purring along under this hood, we find a 3.5-liter naturally aspirated V6, which is interestingly the exact same displacement we find in the other minivans that offer V6s. 287 horsepower happens out of this engine, going through an 8-speed automatic transmission to the front wheels, gives you 22 miles per gallon. If you want better fuel economy, you want the upcoming Carnival Hybrid, but it uses a very different kind of hybrid system to the Toyota Sienna Hybrid or the Pacifica Hybrid, which is a plug-in hybrid. The Pacifica has a V6 under the hood, about 260 horsepower. The Sienna has a 2.5-liter 4-cylinder engine, basically borrowed out of the RAV4, some different electric motors. This is gonna get a 1.6-liter turbo engine, a regular 6-speed automatic transmission, and an electric motor. Everything together is going to give you just over 240 horsepower, so pretty similar to what we find actually in the Sienna, not too far off what we find in the Chrysler, but it's going to give you a more traditional feel because it has a regular stepped automatic transmission. You can't get all-wheel drive in any version of the Carnival. I will say that is the one odd thing about this. If Kia really wanted this to be the Un-Minivan, they should have given us the Un-Minivan feature, which is all-wheel drive. At the moment, if you want all-wheel drive, you have very few options. You have the hybrid Sienna and you have the non-hybrid Pacifica. If you want a non-hybrid, all-wheel drive, regular mechanical system, only going to happen in the Pacifica. If you're willing to have hybrid all-wheel drive with an e-axle in the back, you can get that in the Toyota. Over here in the Carnival, no engine is going to be paired with 4-wheel motivation. All right, let's go for a quick look around the interior. We have strewn jackets around and partially latched seats into place because that's what I imagine this minivan would look like in real life. We have the controls for the 3rd climate control zone right up there on the ceiling. I do have to say I like the way that most minivans put the air vents on the ceiling these days. Also kind of a cool touch, the 2-pane moonroof setup that we find in here. So we have 1 pane back there for the second row, kind of the third row, and then another one up here for the front row passengers. We have the passenger monitoring camera module right there. That's what's going on in the middle of the ceiling right there. Moving back up to the front, we have sun visors that slide to the side. Nice touch. I sort of like this baseball glove orange, brown, leather, whatever we want to call this. I like this two-tone color scheme. There are a variety of different colors available, of course. We have height adjustable shoulder belts and height adjustable headrests for the driver and front passenger. But we also have the controls that we're seeing creeping along the rest of the Hyundai and Kia lineup. The ability to recline and move the seat forward and backward from the back seats. I don't know about you, but if I was a kid, I would just be playing with those nonstop, really annoying whoever was in the front seat, especially if it was my older brother. But, you know, maybe that's just me. Moving on to the front doors, we find that two-tone color scheme continuing with lots of hard plastics down there along the bottom of the door, but also a reasonable amount of premium materials. The entire upper section of the dashboard, that's a soft touch injection molded material. We then get some imitation leather that matches the seat leather right there for the armrest, and then hard plastics that are color matched right in that area. Moving on to the dashboard, we find an injection molded upper dashboard that has the illusion of being stitched. You can see the faux stitch marks right there, but it's actually not stitched. It's just a soft touch plastic. Kind of a horizontal vibe going on there for that section of the dashboard. Hard plastics lower in the dash, for instance, around that glove compartment. It's a reasonably sized bin style compartment, but you could not fit an 11-inch tablet computer inside. I did try. Up here we have the sort of Un-Minivan center console going on and the instrument cluster binnacle. They've put this now in one large housing that houses the 12-inch instrument cluster, 12-inch infotainment system, now running the latest software from Kia. So if I go back over here to the Kia menu, you'll notice this is running the same software that we now find in the Kia EV9. It does support, again, wireless smartphone integration, also some of the later apps that are integratable into the system. We still have the passenger view camera right there. Kind of a cool touch. And you know, you can also move the image around if you want to get a better idea of what's going on, say, back there in that back seat, but you don't have a complete third row view like you might in some other vehicles. Now, in case you're wondering, again, the big reason that this is not a minivan, or the Un-Minivan sort of, is kind of the center console. So don't believe your lying eyes. This doesn't exactly look like a minivan, I sort of swear. Not really, of course, but down here we find the USB connectors for the infotainment system. This is the one way you can know that this is the new software from Hyundai and Kia, is we have this button. If I go in for a close look, you can see it goes between orange and white. That means it's a charge-only port or it's a USB interface port. We then get a charge-only dedicated port there, big Qi wireless charging mat, revised storage space there. Still a pretty typical console shifter, big cup holders right there. Toggles for the heated and ventilated seats, buttons for the heated steering wheel, 360-degree camera, parking sensors, drive modes, etc. Behind the cup holders, we have a small storage area just in front of that padded center armrest. This is where you can stash things like your key. It does have the sort of side button key that we're seeing spreading across the Kia lineup. And then inside this area, we have a relatively small storage area compared to the other minivans. You couldn't fit a gallon of milk inside there, but we do have a soft touch armrest and then cup holders on the back of that for the rear passengers. If you're looking for a minivan with a head-up display, we do have one there, and it is one of Kia's full-color head-up displays. We also have the latest Kia steering wheel design. It's a nicely padded, soft, sort of medium thickness steering wheel, I guess you'd say. It's not overly thick. We have the latest buttons on the steering wheel here for things like the adaptive cruise control, the aggressive lane centering software, and then the infotainment buttons over there on that side. It's time for a shameless merch plug. If you love minivans as much as we do, you need to check out our new shirt design. This is available on the merch store. If you got minivan, you should got our, I know that hurts to say, but you should got our merch because you know, you got minivan. And if you're wondering why it's got minivan, because, you know, got milk in the 90s, which is why it's a 90s minivan. Anyway, so merch on the merch store. Let's get back to the Carnival. Getting the Carnival out on the road, what I've always found funny is that family and friends that I've talked to, you know, they buy a big 3-row SUV or crossover, more specifically crossover, like a new Chevy Traverse or an Acadia or something like that. Grand Highlander is a good example as well. And you ask them, like, why did you get it? They're like, well, I really needed the extra third row room. I needed the extra space, and you know, I didn't want it to drive like a minivan. I hate to tell them, you know, your Grand Highlander drives like a minivan.
Yeah, you're already there.
Yeah, and your minivan drives like a Grand Highlander. So that's one of the interesting things I've always found when it comes to boxy practical vehicles is there's really not that much difference in terms of the driving nature, but there's a big difference when it comes to the practicality. This is a much bigger box inside for exterior dimensions that are about the same.
Yeah, I mean, if your biggest hangup is the sliding doors, I totally get that. But, I mean, that's where the design culture is going with vehicles nowadays, really all manufacturers seem to be moving in this direction in a certain way, but it's like trying to fit as much interior space into as small of a footprint as possible. And that means boxier shapes. You're pretty much already at the minivan shape. Might as well just go the extra mile and get the interior space that you're wanting.
That reality is, of course, why, you know, Kia's really trying hard to make this look less minivan-y, because they realize that a lot of customers really sort of want a minivan secretly, or they need a minivan at the least.
It's a dirty secret.
But they don't want it, yeah.
Yeah.
So they're trying to change minds. I don't know if they have changed enough minds without giving this all-wheel drive. And I know I've said that too many times in this video. Don't worry, you guys are going to hear it more in the video, but I do think that's the key missing element that would turn this into, you know, a truly fantastic alternative.
Yeah.
You know, fun family story. Way back when an aunt of mine had a minivan. My parents had minivans when I was growing up. My aunt had 2 kids, finally decided let's have a minivan. She found the space very practical, but a lot of the people in her neighborhood started buying Suburbans. I mean, it was that rise of the Suburban in the 90s, when everybody was getting Suburbans, and they had Expeditions and Excursions, and there was an endless supply of big SUVs. So she went out and got herself a Suburban. And then she noted that, you know, it wasn't as easy to park as the minivan, and it really wasn't that much roomier inside than her minivan. Yeah, it towed, but she didn't tow anything with it. And sure, it was more off-road capable, but she never went off-road. And, you know, there was the theory that it could be more capable in the snow, except she lived in Houston, it doesn't snow there. And she didn't get one with 4-wheel drive anyway. So, you know.
That is a thing, definitely. I mean, my family vehicle growing up was a 96 Suburban, a GMC Suburban, and it was the long wheelbase. So you had the 3rd row with the extra cargo space, and it was 4-wheel drive, V8, all of the good things that you'd want back then to make it a all-around vehicle. And minivans definitely weren't in the place they are now in terms of styling and price-wise. Obviously, prices have increased altogether, but I think now there's really no excuse not to go minivan. Now, if you're just buying a 3rd row just to have a 3rd row, you don't really have a need for it, then a minivan should be out of the question. Why buy a minivan if you're not going to use that 3rd row? Minivan is almost too big of a footprint. But if you are going to be occasionally using that 3rd row,
or you have like pets, it's actually fun fact. A good friend of mine doesn't have any kids, but he has a minivan because of the pets. Like putting kennels in the back. Oh yeah, it's actually really pretty easy. If you like to carry your dogs in a kennel, or you have other kinds of pets or whatever, you need to carry pet supplies. Yeah, it's just kind of a practical all-around thing.
And a low cargo height.
Yeah, you can actually put 4x8 sheets of plywood back there, which is not something you can actually put in the average half-ton truck, because you know the bed won't actually close anymore. 8-foot beds are just not as common these days.
No.
But you can actually wander at Home Depot, put some 4x8 things in here if you really wanted to do DIY home improvement.
That would be utilizing all of your space. That would be pretty impressive. But yeah, I definitely think that the design of minivans now, whether it's the Pacifica, the Sienna, I mean, they are strikingly nicely designed vehicles. On this specific, the DRLs, the amber DRLs that Kia has brought back, I guess, never really got too rid of it, but it is now on most of their vehicles. It's a nice design feature. And
it's a good look.
You see it on the road, you know what vehicle it is. And Kia's definitely trying to make their name with their styling of all their vehicles. And one of those ways they can make a name for themselves is the beautiful headlights, especially with that quad beam up front. That is a really cool feature here on the
I like that stacked light look.
I do as well.
Now, that's an interesting question. So style-wise, are you Team Pacifica or Team Carnival? I think that the Pacifica is too egg-shaped these days. It's a little too round on the front end. I think it needs to go back to maybe a little bit boxier styling.
I agree. I totally agree. Now, caveat, I have seen some modified minivans. Now that is the next level of minivan life. I've seen some lowered with bigger wheel Pacificas, and they look fantastic. Now in stock form, this by far is a better looking vehicle. Now I definitely would not choose this interior color.
Oh, I like this interior color.
Do you?
It's sort of brick red, kind of brick red meets basketball.
It's a very good. You are very good at descriptions on colors.
I can dig it. I think that the Pacifica has a nice color palette inside too. Sienna is what I think really has a very divisive, feel to it. Sienna on the outside, I'm not the biggest fan of its design, inside actually or outside, I have to admit. I think the inside is, however, very classic minivan. Like, there is so much storage going on in this front area between the two of us. I mean, it's got multi-levels, got a bazillion cup holders, juice box holders, tablet holders. I mean, I don't know how many cell phones the average Sienna owner owns, but apparently it's like 6 of them, and they all need to be within arm's reach with 5 juice boxes and some huge bottles. But that's doable there. And here, it's much more basic. It's much more, SUV-like. You get 2 cup holders, a little storagey thing there, 1 Qi wireless charging mat, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, you kind of took the words out of my mouth. Is like when I was going to say, like, if you just cut this off right here, you never know you're in a minivan.
Exactly.
This just feels like I'm in like a Sportage or a Telluride. Granted, it's a little bit different here and there. You definitely have a very low dash height. That's the first thing I noticed when I got in here. Is the low dash height. Like, my knees are almost level with where the dash is. Now, granted, a couple inches, but
really upright seating position. I mean, that's the big thing.
You have incredible view.
Yeah. You have, I think, actually a higher seating position in this than in a Telluride. And because we have a bigger box on top, you could jack the seat up even higher and really be off the road. If you are looking for, a seating position that is very, again, full-size SUV more than mid-size crossover, you definitely want to check out something like this. And the advantage, of course, as we're wandering around suburbia here in Washington, is that you can still fit this in regular suburban parking spots where, you really wouldn't be able to do that with a Suburban. You also get a really good view of the road because that hood is so short that, corners like this, you're not looking over a hood designed for a big V8 engine. So if you're in an urban area or tight suburban area where you don't have a lot of visibility around corners, it's actually pretty darn easy to live with minivans. And that's kind of I think that the big thing that I've taken away, because, I grew up with minivans, I learned to drive in minivans. My mom actually kind of really got to like her minivan over the years. She hated the whole...
What did she have?
Yeah, she had a Plymouth Voyager, Grand Voyager LE. And at the beginning, she wasn't the biggest fan of it, but she really got to love it because of the practicality. And she was that kind of person that was like, I'm going to do some random home improvement project at home, and, we'd have to go down to the Home Depot and grab the 4x sheet of foam or whatever and, like, jam the big sheet of foam in there. And I mean, it was the 80s, so sometimes you, like, weren't buckled in the back and you were just hanging on to the foam as you were driving down the road. But, that's what life was like in the pre-minivan era,
Yeah. Now, is that the same van that's on the Got Minivan T-shirt?
That is not. That is the next generation of our Got Minivan merch. The first generation. The Got Minivan merch is what I think was the best looking minivan. That was the slightly rounded second gen one
with the wood paneling.
With the wood paneling. Yeah, you could get the Town and Country. Chrysler did the Town and Country.
That's pretty
for the luxury minivan crowd. So I don't know. When did peak minivan happen for you?
Peak minivan, like memories in my life?
Yeah. What is the iconic minivan for you?
Oh wow. It was a long time ago. I mean, like I was telling you, I haven't been in a minivan in a van. Are we calling them mini anymore? These are pretty big. A minivan.
I mean, they're still full size vans. Yeah.
I haven't been in one for quite a long time, probably at least 20 years. And so it's been a while. Not everybody has them. You don't really see them a whole lot, and I don't have a lot of family friends that have more than 2 or 3 kids, and so they're a little more rare. But yeah, probably 20 years since I last been in one, and they have changed immensely. I mean, back then, they like you were saying earlier, like you could climb through like between the front seats, and they were just a little bit less refined than they are now. Now, with Kia, share a lot of the same design features as well as infotainment and gauge cluster, charging ports. They share a lot with their SUVs that are very popular, and also in a lot of our
kind of gives that that sort of crossover vibe, I guess. You know,
yeah,
too.
for sure.
Really
I think that's going to appeal to a lot of people. Now, I do have to say that I think Kia, for me personally, their operating system is the easiest to use. I find that their user interface is very user friendly once you get used to it, because at first it might be a little bit difficult to go through the apps and figure out exactly where everything is. But I mean, it's so structured. You have 6 different windows here to choose from, Apple CarPlay all the way to setup. You just press that, and it has a nice matte finish to the screen itself, so it doesn't glare.
It's pretty responsive.
Yeah, it flows nicely into the digital information display for the driver, and it's just a nice user experience. Now, my biggest complaint down here is going to be this.
Yes.
Now, it is a little bit different
So if you guys can't see it on screen, but down there, this has that same thing we see in the Kia EV6, where the same touch button bank is climate control and infotainment control. And I agree, because we had an EV6 for a year, and even after a year, I never got used to that, because anytime I wanted to adjust something, it was always on the wrong mode.
Yeah, now I will say that this one isn't, I can't remember exactly what vehicle it was, but the change portion where you change it from climate control to your track control or your navigation control, the button to press that was right by the volume knob. So you turn the volume up and you'd accidentally press that, and then you'd actually accidentally turn, oh, actually, you know what, I'm wrong. The auto climate was my issue. You'd always turn on auto climate on accident.
Touching the wrong button. Yeah.
So that is the same in here. I totally had a brain fart
I just wish they were back to the separate buttons with a bit more physical button. But you know, it's a relatively minor interior complaint. I think I would get used to it if I drove it every day exclusively. And maybe that was why in the EV6 I had a problem, because I was in and out of different vehicles here and there. But it is definitely something to keep in mind, guys.
For sure.
Bottom lining the Carnival is honestly pretty easy. I think currently this is the most attractive minivan we have in North America. It's also the freshest minivan we have in North America. It's just missing one of the features so many minivan shoppers have been asking for. That's not the upcoming hybrid system, I think. It's actually all-wheel drive. That is the one thing you won't find here, but you do find in 2 of the other options in the US. So that's still going to be a significant reason to get the Sienna over this. The Sienna falls a little bit short of its lofty fuel economy projections, and I don't care for its interior nearly as much as this. The cargo area in the back is also smaller, but it gives you that option of all-wheel drive. It's not the most capable all-wheel drive system, but at least it has that option. The Pacifica, it's going to have a combination right like this with the V6 and the regular transmission under the hood, but the automatic is not as smooth. It's one of ZF's automatic transmission units, not as smooth as the Hyundai Kia 8-speed automatic. It is, however, going to give you all-wheel drive, which again is something that I think a lot of shoppers have been after. The Carnival, on the other hand, I think is the most attractive minivan. It has the biggest cargo area in the back. It has one of the most interesting seating arrangements in the middle as well. And this is another point of differentiation. If you want second row seats that fold to the floor, you're only going to find that in the Pacifica. If you want second row seats that flip and fold with a child seat latch anchored into place, also, you're only going to find that in the Pacifica. On the other hand, these seats are significantly more comfortable than the ones in the Pacifica because of the way they're designed. So you do have to give away that trade-off or trade that off in the Pacifica to get greater seat comfort. The hybrid, of course, in the Pacifica doesn't get the stow and go, but it does get more comfortable seats, and that's exactly why. If my money were on the line, this is probably the direction that I would go, but some of that is going to depend on how often you use the third row, whether you need to leave child seats latch anchored in there, and whether you need all-wheel drive. So, bottom line, this is my top minivan pick at the moment, but I can't say that it is the most definite top pick because there are so many different reasons to get the competition. I'd love to know what you think about that down there in the comment section below, especially if you really wanted a Carnival and then you ended up with one of the competitors because of the things that I've been talking about. Let me know. I would love to know if your reasons are the same or if they're different. What's going on down there in the comment section below? Let us know, and I'll see all of you later.